Welcome to our first guest lecture of the year. We are very pleased to welcome Sonja Lakić, Utopia Science Innovation Fellow. She's with us for 2 years. This is the second year. We are very happy to have Sonja, a very well-known architect, planner, designer, what else? So many specialties, but she's very it's working. It's very difficult to define precisely your wide spectrum of activities, Sonja. So you mix architecture, ethnography, filmography, image, what else? And many others.
Sociology, psychology, anthropology.
So we're looking forward to your lecture. We know that Caruso is 45 minutes for the lecture, followed by questions and comments. So thank you again for accepting this first lecture of the year. Thank you for being here today.
Thank you, Flora, for the introduction. Hello, everybody. I'm Sonja Lakić, and I'm officially trained as an architect, urban designer, and spatial planner. However, I do stuff that do not necessarily have anything to do with any of these fields. And I'm going to talk about, I usually talk about, and I'm really interested in the post-socialist urban transformation, especially in former Yugoslav cities. However, I tend to avoid any kind of label, such as the label of the post-socialist, because this means that once I label something, the conversation ends before it even started. And whatever I do, I aim to start a conversation and not to have a definite conclusion on whatever I talk about. So for today, I'm going to talk about heteropolitanization that unfolds in the post-Yugoslav urban space. And I'm going to start this lecture with the bricolage that I made with one of the first books that of mine that were related to architecture. So this is the cover of Tashin's edition of Architecture Now, and I bricolaged it for the purpose of this lecture by implementing the title of the lecture. As Flora said, I am EUTOPIA-SIF fellow, so I'm a postdoctoral research fellow at Places Plus Lab at the University of Cergy, and also have a double affiliation with the Center for Advanced Studies. The second slide illustrates what I was trying to tell you. It is an excerpt from the book Architecture Depends, written by Jeremy Till. My relationship with architecture started to go very wrong in a non-architecture direction when I was in the second year of my studies. So I decided that I will never practice conventional architecture and I will never end up working in a studio. Rather, I will talk to people aiming to understand what is really going on in spaces that architects, planners, authorities shape. So what brought me here is my postdoctoral research project entitled Tales from the Peripheral, Melancholy and the Other. It is a story about curating cities and very specific forms of placemaking that unfold in 3 different cities. That is Banja Luka in Bosnia and Herzegovina, Niš in Serbia, and Podgorica in Montenegro. And this is something that I will come back to soon in a later stage of a presentation. So my work and approach to my work is inspired by the fact that most of the researchers dealing with the thing that I'm not going to say, a post-socialist urban transformation, are approaching this topic from a very narrow focus. So they are basically researching what you can see by using your eyes, like what happens in cities, how urban forms changes, or they are into different institutional, political changes, transformations in terms of laws, policies, etc. So what most of the researchers omitted to do is to deal with what this kind of process is really all about, the alteration of geography of daily lives of ordinary people. So why I'm using heteropolitanization, why I'm using the notion of melancholy and the other, according to Sikora and Buzarovsky, if you use labels such as post-socialist, that could be really problematic because one could believe that the process of transition is completed, and this is not the case. So what is completed in all the countries across the former socialist world is the process of political/institutional transformation, but the urban transformation is still going on, and cities are pretty much suffering with, struggling with informality, with, for example, problems due to the centralization and local authorities not being able to deal with challenges of contemporary urban planning, for example. So heteropolitanization is a concept that Gentile and group of authors introduced 10 years ago. And basically it is a story about how complex the cities across the former socialist world have become, how different they are, how people are different. Heteropolis is what would usually be labeled as a post-socialist city. So this is not fixed entity. It's very fluent. It is famous after diversity by all means, different levels of freedom. Also, it is each heteropolis and also process of heteropolitanization is not something that is severed, that is restricted by urban planners, for example, which was the case with the former socialist world. And there are, of course, the characteristics that these cities share regardless of their actual geographical location. So Heteropolis is a city that is basically changed to the extent that it is no longer a system, it is merely a place. Different characteristics are very specific type of expansion, piecemeal type of expansion. So basically new development happens everywhere, often illegally and informally, in forms of speculative development. And also cities that I will briefly talk about today are, for example, characterized by shopping mall planning. So shopping malls are new for us, and there are new spaces, not only of consumption, but new forms of urban places where we do the get-togethers with our friends. They are also famous after the retail revolution, with many apartments being converted into commercial spaces, for example. So the center of the city kind of becomes much more popular than it used to be 3 or 4 decades ago. They're famous after garage capitalism. So everything in any space can be a commercial space. And also there is a lot of small scale objects that are a result of private initiatives, small developers that are taking up the space. What Banja Luka, Podgorica, and Niš have in common is this meridional atmosphere. So there is a lot of cafes. Basically, the entire lives unfold in cafes. Of course, the industry is either completely non-existent or privatized, vacant, chopped into pieces, different pieces, now introducing different kinds of retail. And also there is a lot of informality, transgression, and self-jurisdiction, which you will see in some of these examples. So all of these cities have rules, all of these countries have regulations, but the new generation of people that somehow was, let's say, well, they were not born 3 decades ago, but they took over the cities, are not following, they're not obeying these laws. So these cities are often self-cured, self-curated, and they are also famous after the comeback of the individual houses. So there is a growing trend to engage an architect to design a family house that has nothing to do with the surroundings, even with the ethos of the people who inhabit the specific city or the house itself. Also, what constitutes these cities are the so-called landscape of easy and substitute happiness. So lots of, how do you say, like sports bet plates, they are everywhere, and they're occupying the cities. What is quite interesting that, for example, in terms of urban planning, these cities are not coherent. They are the ocean of micro-localities. They are as such recognized as the city solely by the brand, the concept of city or the name of the city. They are not the city as such. So the only page intentional left blank is creativity, connectivity, and competitiveness. Those are the 3 C's that basically stand for what constitutes heteropolis. What is creativity? What is connectivity? What is competitiveness? Of course, is another form of debate and should be defined. But for example, in each of these cities, it happens on different levels. Banja Luka was one of the cities that were cities candidates for the European Capital of Culture 2024. So this was the city's attempt to be competitive and also creative. So this was not only a local, but also regional and obviously European level. Podgorica is famous after Jada Fest. It's a film festival. Jada is a slang for street. So basically this is open air cinema that has a years-long tradition, and it's not only of a local importance, it is also very important in the former Yugoslav region. And finally, there are small-scale interventions in niche that are giving up space to the youngest. They are initiated by the chief urban planner of the city, also supported by different groups of artists, NGO sector, the city of Niš, and financially supported by European Union. So basically, these kind of actions take place in different places and on different scales in the city. What I'm particularly interested in is a specific form of creativity that Sonja describes as privatism. So basically, this is a very clear intention to make a space look like you, whoever you are, and make it your own by all means. And privatism is a consequence of privatization of social housing, which basically gave birth to new kind of population, to new social category of homeowners who are personalizing their dwellings, and sometimes also altering exteriors of not only building but cities as well. So this is the new agency of resident architects that I'm particularly interested in. So in simple language, these are the people who oppose the original architectural design. They go against what housing used to be or what someone envisioned dwelling practice should look like. To do this kind of research, it is essential to come into contact with real people, with their social practice, to literally work one-on-one with them. And this was possible only by entering people's homes. So I'm doing lots of unconventional ethnography in order to understand what are the motives behind the new spatial device these resident architects invented. So the new spatial device is a glazed balconies. Glazed balconies are everywhere. There are no rules. There is no way to predict where these will happen. And I'm tracing this phenomenon, like I said, in Banja Luka in Bosnia and Herzegovina, Niš in Serbia, and Podgorica in Montenegro, basically peripheral cities that never gained academic attention of any kind, especially from this perspective. So to enter someone's house, well, it requires a strategy of its own, and also you have to develop a specific research methodology, which I did during my PhD when I framed apartment biographies. It is a mixed method research approach wherein I produce architectural drawings of like modifications of apartments. So basically, I take note on what was original architectural design like and what people did with their balcony. So is it a new room? Is it an extra balcony? Is it whatever? So apartment biographies combines architectural drawings. It combines micro narratives, very personal confessions of people. They are based on autobiographical approach and also different media such as photography and movies. So this was a way for me to get in touch with everything personal, aesthetics or the lack of the latter, style, personal needs and demands, and to understand why these things are happening. Glazed balcony is a way to address everything new. So new residential landscape, landscapes, plural, new spatial phenomenon, also new morals and ethics and new means of behavior, because these people, and when I say these people, I'm talking about hundreds of thousands of people who used to be tenants, who simply used space the former state of Yugoslavia provided them to live in, they had really a very specific brain shift once they became homeowners, once they were entitled to enjoy their own property. And when I talk about new morals and ethics, I actually talk about this phenomenon of breaking the law, of not being interested in laws at all, being completely ignorant, and not caring about the state, considering that it doesn't even exist. So all of this is consequence of all of this is that the cities are basically developed in a very specific manner, where personal taste is the landscape management canon. I use this series of quotes, which I usually do when I flirt with movies and song titles, from Little Miss Sunshine movie, not to illustrate that this is the new normal when it comes to dwelling and residing experience, or the new normal in terms of architecture. Simply, this is the only normal that we know. This is how our lives unfold. We occupy space. These kind of popcorn structures pop up everywhere, and we simply don't care, because the only important thing is that we enjoy our human right of being a homeowner. So my work is all about, I'm working at the scale of the everyday. So I pay attention to concrete, meaning built form, but also human clay people and their everyday lives that brings all this together. And the most important thing is that I'm working on the concept on the self, which is a very particular means of being the urban. So we live in an era of individualization, and in order to understand what is going on, I have to work with series of micro narratives that I also juxtapose with grand narrative histories that are in the making in each of these countries. So the autobiographical approach of micro-narratives is also a very privileged way to approach the new social reality. So what you get from these people is not only about understanding their everyday lives, you can juxtapose it with who is in charge of cities, power, legislation, etc., etc. So this to enter someone's house means to be exposed to different kind of personal confessions in the middle of personal traumas, dramas, convictions, beliefs that, there is nothing wrong in breaking the law because everybody else is doing it. Why can't we? Also, lots of my favorite, the advice I never took. It's been ages since I was provided with this one, and I never took it. So lots of advices and, guidelines of how should I organize my life. Also, there is a lot of drama, trauma, difficult topics that are related to the 1990s war, controversial policy of rationalization, which was, for example, introduced in 1993, Banja Luka, when the non-Serb population was violently kicked out under the excuse of apartment swapping. So basically, I'm also in my work, I'm introducing different beliefs of people that nowadays not only inhabit these cities, but they shape them, they rewrite them every day. And yes, some of them always divorced because of the bathroom tiles. So my work is all about finding out how people are saying me in different ways by establishing their own persona within their own dwellings, but also altering the exterior of a building or appropriating a common space. For example, not only glazing a balcony, but building an extra room in, how do you say, like the fire evacuation corridor. So it's quite common that people build an extra room, or even intervene in a staircase. So I did it also in a movie called Corona Retreat, which shed a light on how these people live under the conditions called pandemic. So my work is about understanding how life is being lived, but also what is a housing. Housing is never housing, and housing is never a building. Housing is now converted into a home and personal biography, and it's a story of a life being lived. And what these people do, even when they move furniture, it is a very important act. It's very political because it's also a part of creation of the self, of exercising who you are as a person. So finally, going back to what brought me here, my postdoctoral project and the melancholy and the other. This is also very tender, but simultaneously very traumatic concept that allowed me like not to end a discussion on the transition and post-socialist urban transformation in the countries that I chose to work on, but also to start an open-ended conversation, because melancholy and the other is everywhere. And melancholy is a mode of collective production. It is related to something that is very, very, very fragile and intimate. So human state of mind, emotions, while the other, or the geographical other, is everyone, or every country, every city that kind of feels excluded from this process of modernization. So melancholy is also a situation when a subject, be it a city or a country, is in a position that when they are denied the right to be modern, where they don't have access to modernization, and this is something universal. Huh? Everybody should be part of this process. And in melancholy and the other, it's really important that to understand that cities are the non-Western subjects, and they have very specific relationship with everything Western. So these cities either adore whatever comes from the West, to the extent that they imitate everything, such as architectural forms, and they implement it in environments without paying attention, does this work? Or they do totally opposite. They resist, they hate West, they resist it, they stick to traditional forms, traditional means of production of space, or they simply turn to their past and glorify national heroes, for example. So approaching this problem, melancholy in the other curating cities is basically means to be involved in the process of observing how city is written and rewritten every day, to choose what I look at. So I also tend to curate a space in a way, and then I deal with people who curate a space every day. So I'm approaching a city as a collection that is either curated or it is to be curated, and I'm looking at different possibilities and happenings in this sense. So to curate, what is curation? It is care and responsibility for something. So maybe a rose would mean that these people care for something, but this is a picture perfect example of negligence, of informality, chaos and anarchy that took over cities completely. Also, curation of the city is interplay between habitation and the spatial realm. So there are different rhetorics, such as this one very ethno-national one of recalling Serb national heroes of the previous war in Banja Luka, Bosnia and Herzegovina. And what is very particular for this space and time momentum of curation and care is that who gets to create the city are not architects and planners anymore. It's the everyday people. So they are in charge of the future of the city or the place. And some curator is a guardian or seer keeper, usually with a concern for tangible objects, cultural resources. And this is an image of Milorad Dodik. I have even no idea what kind of political position he now has, because he's been altering. I believe that he is now representative of Serbian people in the presidency of Bosnia and Herzegovina, but he has the reputation of a dictator who is basically, I define him as the curator of all of our lives, and also the lives of our prospective children that are about to inhabit this planet. So he is the one in charge, and the regime is in charge of, for example, Banja Luka becoming ethnically clean city, where you can easily detect that Serbs are the nation that dominates the space. I recently spoke about fascination, how different nations are fascinated with everything Western. So this is an example from Podgorica. I took this photo in the 2016. It is an image of a construction of a skyscraper that was growing. Basically, it was jeopardizing the very nice standard fragile structure of Hotel Podgorica, which was basically, it is famous after the facade of a made out of the pebbles from the river. And this is what, for example, Podgorica does. So they imitate forms that have nothing to do with Montenegrin landscape, with Montenegrin people, but Yes, this is what they are really eager to become modern, to be recognized as the modern, to the extent that they jeopardize their own cultural heritage and their own ethics. Niche is a mix of everything, of this and that. And their melancholy and the position of other lies in the fact that this is a city of a variety of broken promises and also failed promises. So I'm approaching it from this perspective of urban assemblage. And here I refer to work of Professor Alexa Ferber, my German, pardon my German. I envisioned this lecture not to be only a story about heteropolitanization and my postdoctoral project that I did here, but also different projects that I did during my 12 months while altering between France and Spain, that is University of Pompeu Fabra, where I'm doing my secondment. So one of the newest projects is a book on city and trauma, wherein trauma is perceived as agency of disaster, destruction, and basically discomfort. Jelena Prokopievich, who is a co-supervisor of mine in Pompeu Fabra, and I co-edited this book with an aim to understand how trauma affects not only cities, but also us, and how does it form urban identities, how does it influence urban histories, and what does it do to us and to urban memory. So here we are gathering around 20 different most prominent researchers, like most prominent contemporary minds that come from different disciplines, but are all responding to this call of city and trauma, talking either about traumas of construction, traumas caused by destruction, those that are caused by imposition of public policies and laws, for example, or different traumas of discrimination. And this is all part of DISCO, the initiative Jelena and Prokopievich and I started. Basically, it is a lab and observatory of discomfort. We are operating between Paris and Barcelona. And of course, we are inspired by our former Yugoslav, forever Yugoslav origin and our homeland, because when you're from Yugoslavia, trauma is an essential part of your life. And finally, something that I'm also looking forward to, that is also part of my EUTOPIA-SIF journey, is a series of talks calling places. So places is also the name of my lab, plus in French. And this is an initiative that starts in October with Jelena Prokopievich talking about the North Korea. So the idea is to gather different people talking about mostly peripheral places, cities, territories, different concepts and approaches that will turn into podcast or publication. And so before saying thank you, I'm leaving my email in case anybody wants to get in touch, and I thank you for your attention.